Good morning, and very good morning. How's everybody? I hope everybody is fine and doing great. Well, Nikon Middle East were very kind enough to give me Nikon D6 for doing some testing and check out the camera, how its performance and everything. As you all aware that D6 is all about high speed action and high ISO. uh, Rest of the images, like for still life, landscape, portrait, you can take from any other camera, but these machines like D5, D6, D4s, D4, they were built for some really hardcore stuff and for some high speed action photography, and also built for low light. So in order to test these cameras, you really need to craft the environment, or you really need to take that camera into that kind of scenario where you're shooting high frames per second and see their autofocus performance, or you shoot these machines in low light capabilities and see how much the dynamic range and high ISO these machines can offer. So I did this kind of test for both autofocus and for high ISO. Not only high ISO, but also I push the camera and see its dynamic range. And I compare this with the D4s. I'm talking about D6 in compared to D4s. Now, why D4s? Why not with D5? Well, first off, I don't own D5, so I don't have it. I own D4s, so I'm comparing it with D4s. These are the images that you can see are taken. Some are properly exposed, some are underexposed, and this definitely shows its high ISO performance. These from here till here, these images were taken from D4s, as you can see over here. These are all taken from D4s. Any image from here all the way to the top, these were taken from D6. These were taken at ISO 100, 500, 1000, 3200, 6400, 12800, 25600, and multiple of one stop. And what I did, like for example, if I shoot this image at ISO 100, so I took the next few images. Wait, sorry. So if I take image at ISO 100, I take additional 4-5 shots at by taking the camera underexposed. This is by -1, stop underexposed, -2, -3, -4, -5. Each ISO. This was at ISO 100, as you can see over here. So this one was taken at ISO 500, as you can see here. This one is taken 1000, as you can see here, and this one's taken 3200, as you can see here, and so forth and on. So all these ISOs, one is taken at proper expose as 0 as per exposure meter, and rest of the 5 images by -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. Now, why I did that? I did that because I want to recover these exposures and try to recover the highlights and shadows and see how much data and how much details I can recover, how much clean the file is at different ISOs. I did the same with D4 as well. So as you can see, ISO 100, this was just taken at ISO 500, this was just taken at 3200 ISO, and so forth on. So I'm going to edit these images one by one in front of you, and I'm going to compare these images side by side for you guys, so you can see the real time, the real data, the real raw files, how performing. So let's start. Let's go with the D6 image. This is D6 image taken at ISO 100. Alright. Camera was on aperture priority 2.8. A depth of field and shutter speed doesn't matter at this point of time. We have to just see the color bending or how much details we can get, especially in the darker areas of the scene and all these tests, and how much the camera and raw files can retain the details or the colors after we trying to recover the shadows. So let's start. This was taken at 0 meter reading, so it means that it's properly exposed. By the way, let's check one more thing. I believe it was taken on matrix metering. So yeah, it was camera was on matrix meter. So this was at ISO 100. This is at -1 EV. So I can increase the exposure by 1 EV. So let's start with +1. So this is 1 EV, right? I can do one more thing. I can reset it and I can press Control U if you are Windows user, or Command U on you if you are Mac user on your keyboard, and this will automatically fix the exposure. So I'm going to, because I am a Mac user, so I'm going to press Command U and it properly expose. So I don't have to, and it's exposed by 1.09 instead of 1 because I did it 1. So if I'm compare this with this image, the original image, and I want you guys to check the histogram and see. So it means that the later file is overexposed, so little overexposed. So let's put it 1. That's right. So now if I'm comparing, looks little bit different. Let's compare them. Press C. Okay, so this was on the left hand side, the original image at 0 exposure compensation, and at the right side it was taken at -1 EV. So if now we are going to compare side by side, looks identical, nothing wrong, everything is tech sharp. I mean, sharpness has nothing to do right now. We are trying to see the if we have any color banding or if we have any visible noise. So that's it. So let's go out from the comparison, and this is -1 EV. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to directly go on this is -2 EV. So I'm going to adjust the exposure by 2 stop. Oops. +2 more, and I'm going to compare it with the original image. By the way, I'm still comparing D6 images side by side. I have not compared with D4s so far, and so far so good. Okay, this time on the left hand side, this is the -2 EV, and this on the right side we have 0 exposure compensation image, which you can see from the shutter speed. So this is 0 exposure compensation, this is -2 EV, 0 EV -2 EV, and I recovered the exposure by 2 stop. So let's do one thing. Let's go to develop module, reset, and let's do this 3 stop +3. Alright, looks, this is 1, this is original 0 exposure, and this is 3 exposure compensation. Okay, so let's do this. On the left hand side we have 0 exposure compensation original image. On the right hand side we have -3 EV exposure compensation recovery. So as you can see, there is noticeable, yeah, negligible noise which you can ignore. I mean, if we go especially in the black areas, let's check out the black areas. Yeah, there is noise. As you can see, they are green, but you're talking about -3 stop exposure recovery. So even with that, without applying any noise reduction, the file contains the details massively. So, you know, let's stop this and let's go and compare the images with D4s. Alright, so I'm still on 100 ISO image. Alright, so this is ISO 100, and where is D4? This is D4. Sorry, this is D6, and alright. So on the right hand side we have D4s, and on the left hand side we have D6. Both are at ISO 100. Same lens was used, but you can see the metering. On the D6 is 1/6, and on the D4s it was 1/10, a third of a stop difference in the metering. The colors, white balance, actually somehow D6 color looks much more vivid. And camera was on auto white balance all the way. If you look over here, especially this part, this whole part, and D4s, it looks a little pale. In D6, it looks quite vivid. Like there is not much color correction you need to do on D6, but on D4s, yeah, you need to fix a little. Not much, a little. And look at this part. This the same. This is kind of a pale, like little desaturated. On D6, it's not. It's pretty much more vivid in compared to D4s. And the right hand side we have D4s. On the left hand side we have D6. So if I click over here, you can see D6. On the right hand side, it's D4s. That's interesting. Even I didn't notice that. Alright, so because these are zero exposure composition images, so how about if we go and see -3 stop images for both D6 and D4s and see how they are going to compare. So let's do that. So I'm going to develop module, and this is D6. This was -3 UV, so I'm going to add +3 to recover, and I'm going to do the same for D4s. This was 0, -1, -2, -3. So I'm compared this +3. Alright, so now this, no, not this one, this one in conjunction with this one, compare. Alright, so on the left hand side we have D6, as you can see, and on the right hand side we have D4s. Both these images were -3, like they were captured at -3 stop underexposed, and both are recovered in Lightroom by adding the exposure. So here's the thing, now you start checking. Okay, D4s doesn't show any grain, D6 does show grain. Surprise, surprise, surprise. But white balance on D4s, it sucks big time. It really sucks. The exposure on D6 is much better, even though I put +3, and on D4s I also put +3. But the thing is, the camera was on aperture priority. So the reason for D4s looks dull is this shutter speed, which is 2/3 of a stop underexposed. Why? I have no idea. Same scene, camera was on aperture priority. So this means that the meter in both cameras behave differently. So let's check the colors, especially this part. This part. Alright. White balance on the D4s sucks, no doubt. But it's much cleaner in D4s. Not much visible bending. In D6 there is those vertical lines you can see. Okay, so let's go and check high ISO performances. So I'm directly jumping on 1000 ISO on D6, which I'm going to compare. This was 100, this was 500, this was 1000. Both cameras. No, that's 3200. Wrong. This is 1000. Okay, 1000 ISOs. So hold one stop underexposed. Why? Alright, let's see. So at 1000 ISO image, there is no noise, colors. This is quite clear that now the camera meter on D4s is approximately one stop behind. As you can see, this is 1/30th of the shutter speed, this is 1/60th of the shutter speed. The exposure is different. So I imagine if I going to adjust the exposure on D4s, not this, this one, this one. Thousand. Okay, let's half a second, and let's see if it matches with the exposure of D6 at 32,000, 3,200 ISOs. And this 500, that's 1000, and that's 3000. That's 6. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this is D6 image is 3200, and this is D4s image. Both were taken at 3200 ISO. I adjusted D4 image by half a stop. Try to get the matching exposure because the camera meter on D4s was lagging. Alright, so now they are matching exposure. Noise is somehow D4 is much fine in detail. If you can see over here, this is kind of like some inbuilt camera noise reduction applied. The details on D4s is kind of a sharper. Let's go over here. D6 looks good, not D4s. Maybe the focus issue. The colors on D6 is still little here, a hair equal better than D4s. You can see this part and you can see this part of D4s. So the over here on D4s is more kind of a desaturated white balance issue, and D6 provides a little more accurate colors, a little better than D4s. Alright, so let's jump and go for some other high ISOs. Okay, 6400. No, I don't want. That's 12,800. Let's do one thing. I'm going to recover the exposure of this was taken in -1, -2, and -3. So if I'm going to go for -3 +3, that's D6. Now I'm going to check D4s. This is 6400. This is 12,800, and this is a -3 EV. And instead of -3 EV, I'm going to I'm not going to add +3 EV. I'm going to add +3.5. Why? Because D4s is constantly showing underexposed images, which I don't want to see. So I believe, okay, this is D6 -3 stop underexposed, we covered, and this is the one. Compare. Okay, on the left hand side we have D6, on the right hand side we have D4s. Both were having auto white balance, and I adjusted the exposure of +3 because this was taken in -3, so I add 3 stop exposure in Lightroom, and in this I add 3.5. Well, you can clearly see the difference, that if you're trying to recover -3 stop, I have -5 stop images, but I don't want to go to that extreme. I just want to show you the real life scenario. Okay, here D4s is casting magenta shift and D6 casting green tint. Now this part is properly exposed almost by both. The D4s try to retain white color naturally the way it is. D6 casting kind of a green tint, which you can see over here. It's not available on D4s, it's not there. On D6 this whole green cast. So if you can see, it's whole green cast on D6, and over here it's by this. Now let's go and check 25,600 ISO. Okay, without going into any kind of this scenario. So this is 25,600 with zero exposure compensation. 25,600. Okay, let's compare. Okay, both were taken at 25,600. All right. Okay. The autofocus area of D4s contains better details in compared to D6, as you can see. But when it comes to the front focusing thing, both are equal. I don't see anything. 25,600. Over here we are having green casting. D6 is still producing better colors in compared to D4s. Sorry. And yep, that's true. D6 is still producing better colors. No casting, no tint, no magenta or green casting observed when it comes to zero exposure compensation images. Yeah, of course, when you are shooting underexpose at high ISO and try to recover the details, this is where camera starts showing behavior. But this thing is really strange because over here at D6 it's kind of like a lot of noise reduction applied, so losing details. In D4s it's not, it's much finer in compared to D6. That's really strange. But the colors on D6 still better. Look, especially this part. This part, D6 still providing better colors. So white balance on both works. Actually, white balance on D6 overall is more kind of a warm, and this is more kind of a cold on D4s. Strange. Let's go to develop module again. I want to go to D4s. 51,200. That's 118. 51,200. Okay, let's start comparing these two files. Alright, so we are going to have 51,200. Okay, right out of the gate, D4s having green cast. It's, you can see from miles away, this part green cast overall. D4s, oh sorry, D6 much better. This is all green cast. D6 again provide better color. As you can see, D6 provide better color. Alright, looks good. The thing which I am still kind of surprised to some extent, that D4s still providing a little fine detail, especially in autofocus areas, much better details, in which you can see over here. Look, that wall socket of the light, that button on D4s is still better in details in compared to D6. Even that door handle on D6 is clearly see that a lot of noise, internal camera noise reduction applied, and it wasn't, by the way, In D4s, it's much finer. See that the retaining the details is has nothing to do with colors. Colors reproduction is totally separate thing, which is related to camera SNR firmware. But retain these SNR, which is also responsible for applying noise reduction and retaining the colors independently. This is something very hard to do inside very by a processor of a camera. And somehow, see, this is the thing, you have to compromise in order to produce better. This is what I understand so far by comparing D6 and D4s, that if you want to retain a good colors, which you can see, uh, like D6 is clearly winning, and if you've seen in this whole video so far, D6 is clearly winning when it comes to color reproduction, but at the same time it loses to maintain the details at autofocus area, or um, especially the at high ISOs. So in order, it's a compromise, I believe, inside a camera SNR processor, that you want to retain the details, then you have to lose colors, which is in case of D4s. But if you want to retain the colors and better white balance, then you have to lose the details. I mean, if you want to retain the colors and better white balance, then you have to lose the details, which is in case of D6. So this is what I have learned so far, that D4s is still a hair better when it comes to retain the details, especially at high ISOs. But in order to do that, it loses the white balance, cost, causing casting, that green tint or magenta casting, and also the color reproduction, which is not here. You can see it's not good. The colors are faded away, and also D4s is somehow almost a stop behind in exposure, even though camera was on aperture priority. So that kind of a strange. On other hand, on D6 you have better uh, colors in compared to D4s, better white balance, that's for sure. But at the same time, because D4s pushing the boundaries too much when it comes to high ISOs, like you are talking about 3.2 million, that's where you are losing the details, which is clearly seen in D6. Okay, you know what, let's go down and go for some low ISO shots, and let's see. Okay, this is 500. Okay, ISO 500, and what was this was also 500, which is image number 88. Okay, so 7 versus 88. Compare. Okay, let's compare side by side at low ISOs, just in order to see how. On the right hand side again I have D4s, on the left hand side again I have D6. Both were shot at ISO 500. So, and the resultant shutter speed is nearly identical. Let's go dive into the details at the door. Okay, because of the 2.8 you probably can't see much of a difference, but okay, let's compare over here. As you can see, both were shot at 2.8. This is kind of a hair equal blur than this one. Okay, let's go over here. D6 produce much better rendition over here in compared to D4s. It's sharper over here, this is not. Maybe because of the depth of field, because I was focusing over here. So The colors are here. You can see this is kind of a dark, like desaturated reddish. Over here it's more vivid on D6. Same thing over here. This is kind of a dull orange yellowish basket. Over here is more vivid, more brightened. Alright. The overall impact on D4s is kind of a little desaturated, like the colors are little pale, little dark. Over here is not in D6. The details over here it looks equal to me. Let's dive in more. How about we have seen the high ISO performances. It's quite clear that D4s retains the details but losing the colors and white balance. At high ISOs, D6 clearly retain the colors and better white balance but loses the details. So that's a trade-off. I want to see how this camera works for okay, let's say this is 1000 ISO, 1000 ISO 0 exposure, -1, -2. I'm going to do the same for this is +2. Let's see. Okay, this is image number 15, 1000 ISO, and I'm going to do the same with D4s, 100, 500. This is 1000. Why don't I have 1000? No 1000? Oh, I didn't shoot with 1000. Wow, I skipped 1000. No worries. Let's do it with 3200 ISO. So at 3200 ISO, this was shot at -2 AV. I will do the same with D6 as well. So I'm going to adjust +2, 96. Okay. This is 3200 here. +2. This is D6 image. So I'm going to compare. Here it is. Alright. So on the right hand side we have D4s at 3200 ISO. On the left hand side I have D6. Okay, let's check the details. Depth of field issue. Because this was taken at 4, this was taken at 2.4, 2.8, so that's my fault. Right, because I was trying to adjust the exposure, that's why. But in the front, again that white balance issue on D4s and the exposure meter and the colors. These shots were recovered at -2 stop. So are there any visible bending? Not as such. No visible bending. Looks pretty fine. So up to 2 stops you can recover images without any issue in both D4, D4s and D6. Develop module. Okay. Alright, so that was taken. Okay, this was taken at. Okay, now I'm going to sum up this video. As you have already seen, the side-by-side comparisons, but I want to show you guys one last time the ISO performance of each camera and their maximum. So this was taken at ISO 100, clean image, D6. Okay, this was taken at 500, clean image, nothing to worry. This was taken at ISO 1000, clean image, like piece of cake, nothing to worry. And after that, this is 3200 ISO, piece of cake, literally nothing to worry. And this was taken at 6400 ISO, colors, everything, no visible noise, image look perfectly fine. Look at that, man, look at those details, no noise, seriously no noise. This is the reflection from the chairs. So that's not bending, that's the reflection of the chairs. Yeah, this you can see, but you can remove it. 6400 ISO. Now this is 12800 ISO. Wow. 12800 ISO, containing all the colors, no magenta casting, and it works like a charm. Amazing. D6 is really kicking, but 25,600, this is where you slightly experience white balance, because this is 12,800 and this is 25,600. You might see a little green cast over here. Let me compare. This is 12,800, this is 25,600. Let's compare. Both images are from D6. Alright, as you can see, D6 over here and D6 over here. So this was taken at 12,800, this was taken at 25,600. There might be a slight magenta cast. If I'm going out, I may have seen, but maybe it's not. Looks perfectly fine. The camera internal high noise reduction really works well, because the more you start increasing the ISOs, the internal camera noise reduction apply automatically. You can turn it off from the camera menu, but you will see a lot of grains, and there are different levels. So I set it for average, in the middle. Looks fine. Looks pretty fine. Next, that's 12,500, that's 51,200. Of course, at 51,200, this is 25,600. That's clear magenta shift. Green shift. My apologies. Let's compare. Both are D6 images. This was taken at 51,200. This was taken at 25,600. You can clearly see the internal noise reduction software applies on D6, and it softens this lens. When 25,600, the lens is still pretty sharp, because as I increase the ISO, so camera applies the internal noise reduction and it softens the edges of this lens over here. So higher the noise, softer the images. Only if you have enabled the high ISO noise reduction, and you can see the details. This one really soft, but surprisingly the colors are still intact. The white balance is still much better in this. Alright, let's go further. That's 102,400. You can see. I don't have to tell you. Even at this, I take -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. What about if I increase -3? Yucks. That's -3 stop and expose recovered. What about -5? So this was taken at -5, ISO 102,400. You can see the extreme in this. I tried to recover -5 stop and expose image taken at 102,400 ISO. What about -1 stop? Still not recommended. Okay, 204,800. Even on that, I took 5 shots. Underexposed. Let's say -3 stop. So if I'm going to recover 3 stop. Now this is surprising. At 204,000, the -3 stop contains details in compared to this one. I will check some other time. Okay, this one 409,600, and this is where things start falling apart. 819,200. Even on that, I was able to capture 4 stop underexpose. There is nothing. At 819,200, I'm trying to recover in Lightroom. There is no detail. Okay, how about -1 stop? It looks like a film. So that image is recovered by -1 stop by adding a stop in Lightroom, taken at 819,200 ISO. Okay, and then we are going into a territory of 1.6 million. That's 3.2 million. That's 1.6 million. This is 3.2 million. -1, -2. 3.2 million. Yes. Alright, let's from here we have going to start D4s. That's 100. That's 500. I missed the shot of taking 1,000, which is fine. That's 3,200. Look at that thing, at 3,200. D4s really kicking butt. Really condense all the details. No shift of any magenta or green casting. 6,400. That's where white balance starts having issue, because this is 3,200, this is 6,400. Let's kind of falling. That's 12,800. Very much intact. That's 25,600. Surprisingly, 25,600 looks much better in D4s. and this is 51,200 ISO. This is 25,600, 51,200. That's 102,400. That's 51. Alright. And then wait. This is 102,400. This is 204,800, 409,600. That's it. You can clearly see bending. So that's it, guys. The overall response for this whole exercise is that both cameras D6 and D4 are performing very well at low ISOs, but the moment you start pushing the ISO up, both cameras are clearly having their own priorities. In D4s, it contains the details, but you start losing the colors, you start losing the white balance, and also the camera meter was offset by 1 stop at high ISO. Why? Because of the camera meter setting. It was set by Nikon by -1 stop. There is a reason for that, which I will explain some other time. On other hand, D6 try to retain colors and white balance at the same time, but at the compromising the details. So we have 3 things in hand in this whole exercise. One is color, second is white balance, third is details, which is directly proportional to ISO. So in order to retain that details, D4 was losing white balance and colors, but D6 not only retain the colors, not only retain the white balance, but at the expense of the details, because it is built for high ISO. So it was losing all the details, which I have shown you the examples over here. And when you're trying to recover the images from by taking underexposing the shots and then try to recover in post-processing, this is where you can go up to -2 stop, both in case of D4s and D6. So if you have 2 stops underexposed and you try to recover the details, you are pretty much fine in both cameras. But if you are taking the images by 3 stop underexposed, that's where D4s is losing the colors and losing the white balance, but D6 not only retain the colors but also the white balance, even at -3 stop underexposed. Let's do a quick test. This is 500, this is 1000. So this is 3200, and this was taken in -3 stop underexposed. So if I'm trying to recover by my +3, and then this compare, this is D6. Both images were taken at 3200 ISO. This was taken at 0 exposure compensation. On the right side we take them in -3, so I added the exposure by +3, and as you can see, D6 do the job pretty well. Yeah, it looks little desaturated, but you're talking about -3 stop underexposed recovery. This is also white balance shifted. 3200. So how about D4s? 3 stop. That's 100. That's 500. And that's 3200. And this was taken in -3 UV. So I'm going going to compare with this. So you just saw before D6 images taken at 3200 ISO. I am trying to do the same with D4s. Both these images were of D4s taken at 3200 ISO. The left side image taken at 0 exposure compensation, and right side image taken at -3 stop underexpose, and I just add 3 stop exposure into it and try to recover the details. But you see, and I have told you before, D4s try to recover the details but at the expense of white balance and color, and you can see white balance is totally out. The colors are totally falling apart, much worse than D6. D6 was able to create. Okay, let's do one thing. I compare this image of -3 stop from D4s, and I'm going to compare with D6 image taken at 3200 ISO and with -3 stop exposure recovery. So this is 97. This is no. Compare. This is the one. Yep. 22. And that was 97. Compare. So on the right hand side we have D4s 3200 ISO -3 stop exposure recovered. On the left hand side we have D6 taken at 3200 ISO -3 stop exposure recovery, and you can clearly see that D6 wins by a mile when it comes to white balance and color. You see the details. D6 provides much better white balance and colors. Both images were taken -3 stop underexpose. I just added 3 stop of light in both images taken at 3200 ISO, and you can clearly see that D6 not only contains the details but it also contains the white balance, the colors and the white balance. Amazing on D6, and D4s not so much. So I'm going to sum up this video by saying that I have just showed you a very detailed comparison of high ISO performance, dynamic range, the color details and white balance between D4s and D6, taking at different ISO, taken with different different stop of underexposed images, and their post image recovery comparison. D6 is leading its way on D4s by retaining the colors, by retaining the white balance as much as possible. When it comes to providing the details, it's falling a little behind than D4s. Why? Because D6 is, you're talking about 3.2 million ISO, so the firmware inside D6, it's built to pushing the ISO, the noise, as minimum as possible. That was causing losing the details in D6, whereas in D4s, because its ISO is not as good as D6, that's why D6 or D4s was able to retain a little more better details than D6. So D4s wins over D6 in order to retain better details, and D6 wins over D4s in terms of retaining the white balance and the colors across the board, across at any ISO at any time. So that was my very detailed comparison of D6. I hope you like it, and stay tuned for more stuff at VUEGRAPHY. Thank you very much.